I refuse to not be first.
Do we do enough? Well, I never shut up about it.
It must have been about 16, 17. We nicked their guilt rings. Right, the bouncer's guilt rings.
This is no good for me. That's the reality. If you want the honest truth, and I see it every day.
This is Mohammed for Rafael TV, proudly sponsored by Everlast. I'm joined by DanRafael, who is, of course, at the Shakur Stevenson fight last night. Incredible performance from Shakur. We'll come on to that, and also Bam Rodriguez on the DAZN card. We'll come on to the action from last night in a bit, but I want to start off, Dan, with the main talking point in boxing this week. Another situation in relations to PEDs in boxing. Amir Khan, we learned, obviously received a 2-year ban from Ukad for a failed test in relation to the Kell Brook fight. I just want to get your thoughts about the promoter of that fight, boxer and Ben Shalom. Ben has said several times since the news broke that he only found out, just like us, via social media. The board didn't inform him about Amir's failed test on the night of the fight with Kell Brook. So what are your thoughts on that, firstly?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I wasn't actually at the Shakur fight, but I sure paid attention. We'll get to that. As it relates to the drug testing situation, it is rather bizarre to me that the promoter of the event would not be informed. In the United States, if there is a failed drug test, whether it's a commission order test or it's a test that is handled strictly by VADA, sometimes VADA acts as the conduit between the promotion and the commission in terms of the testing, or if it was USADA, even whatever it is, the promoter is among the very small group of folks that are notified. And so this is not something that just occurred. For Ukad to have known the results of this situation, going back to when they first suspended Amir back in April of 2022, a couple of months after the fight, which that makes sense because it does take some time to get the test results back. I find that to be absolutely unconscionable. And even if you want to say, okay, they had to go through their due diligence and do the whatever investigating and hold their whatever their tribunal was to determine what the punishment was going to be, or if there was any kind of mitigating circumstances, I just find it bizarre that they wouldn't notify the others that were directly involved with the situation. It's just another one of the things that go on in testing in the UK that just makes no sense to me.
The only thing I can think of here is obviously when promoters put on shows here, and as in the UK, and they pay for VADA testing, that's obviously a contract between the promoter and VADA, and therefore if there's a failed VADA test, VADA will inform the promoter because that's who the contract's between. Whereas with UKAD, the contract isn't with UKAD and the promoter. So there might
you can stop right there, because in the United States, a VADA contract is not even necessarily with the promoter. It's with the boxers, man to man. The two boxers contract. Now, the promoter may handle paperwork and just to make things, like a clearinghouse. But even if that's not the case, if there's a failed VADA test in America, if there's a contract with the promoter, it doesn't make a difference. They know up front that if there's a failed test or any results, positive or negative, they are reported not only to the people on the contract and the promoter, they're reported to the local commission, not a party to the contract. They're reported to the Association of Boxing Commissions, which oversees all state commissions and tribal commissions in the United States. So, and they're not party to the contract. So that's if they're going to use that as an excuse or a reason, and I don't know that to be the case, I find that to be absolutely nonsense.
Okay, so from what you know, UKAD, when there's a failed test like Amir had, UKAD should be telling, or they're allowed to tell the promoter rather than just the fighter, which is clearly, according to Ben, what's happening here. They've just told Amir Khan.
I don't understand what the hell they're doing. I mean, I don't know the direct ins and outs of what their minutiae of the rules say. I do know how it operates in the United States. It shouldn't be that much different. We're talking about the same sorts of tests, the same sorts of substances, the same sorts of results that take place. It should be very transparent. It should be streamlined. It shouldn't be that complicated. You order a test for a fighter that is preparing for a fight or a post-fight test. You give them the urine test, perhaps a blood test, depending on what the rules say. You test that substance, an A and a B sample is procured. If one comes back positive, notify those who need to know. You do your due diligence. You seek their opinions, their excuses, their reasons, their rationales, whatever the case may be, and you get your experts involved and you go through the process. And then, thing that's more, if Ben Shalom didn't know about it, I mean, I don't think that's appropriate, but it's really doesn't make a difference. He may be pissed off about it, but it doesn't change anything. I mean, the fight is over, the promotion is done, whatever. So I don't really think that's a huge deal. What I find to be way more of a problem than not notifying a promoter is the fact that it would take as long as it would, that if you would issue a provisional suspension to Amir Khan in April of 2022, which is a reasonable time frame following a February fight, and it doesn't come to light until literally 14 months later, there's no reason for that. That is inexcusable. I know from experience, and you don't even need experience. It doesn't take 14 months to test somebody for the substance that Amir reportedly tested positive for. It just doesn't take that long. Even if it takes a couple of months, fine. And then again, you have to do your investigations. I understand you want to keep it quiet until you know for sure what the results are, if they're going to, be guilty of an infraction, or maybe there's a reason and it's not going to come out because you don't want to smear the guy's name. Okay, that's fine. But 14 months, give me a fucking break. Doesn't take that long. And by the way, this is not like Ukad's first time having this issue. You can go back to when Tyson Fury had his Ukad problems. He had such a long time between the positive test being known by Ukad that he already fought again after that and defeated Vladimir Klitschko. So after he became the heavyweight champion, it became public that he took a backdated 2-year ban because of that situation. So they haven't changed their ways. They're not transparent, and transparency is a very important thing in my opinion. You shine the light, and and the truth will see through is the way I look at it.
Dan, yeah, I'm sure you've covered plenty of Amir Khan's fights. Obviously, a lot of them were in the States, of course. He made a big name for himself in America, and you know him very well. His character, obviously been a clean fighter throughout his journey. Literally, the only time he has popped was the last test he would have done on the night of the Kell Brook fight. Were you surprised? Because I think a lot of people were surprised, from the performance itself and knowing Amir that this actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was surprised because, as you said, he's gone through a long career fighting lots of top guys, never had any whiff of an issue with PEDs. Even before he was a professional, they're tested when you're in an Olympic situation. He was a silver medal winner in the Olympics when he was 17 years old, had been through plenty of drug testing as an amateur and then as a professional. But, you just never know. And I've covered Amir a ton in his career. I feel like I know him probably almost as well as many of the fighters I have covered. If I was going to give you a list of here are the 10 fighters that I feel like I know on a personal level the best compared to all the other guys I've covered, I would probably put Amir on that list. But still, we're friends. I don't know what goes on when we're not hanging out, or at a fight together, rather. I mean, it's not like we call each other up on the phone. Hey, what are you doing this weekend? So all I know is a positive test came back. And one thing I know also is whatever it was, it sure as heck didn't help his performance, because the fight against Kell Brook was, obviously one of the worst performances of his entire career, coming out of retirement just to take that fight that so many people wanted to see, obviously get a big payday that went along with it. Unfortunately, I'm like a lot of people that have either been fans of boxing or covered boxing for a long period of time, or, been involved in the industry for a number of years, is you just know that there is a large number of people who use performance enhancing drugs, and a lot of them get away with it. Many of them don't. I'm not going to tell you I believe that Amir Khan, he purposely used it or he didn't. I don't know the answer to that. And I don't have really a feel for it, just because I don't know what was going on with him prior to that. But there's a lot of guys out there that use and we don't know about. And it's unfortunate. And that's why drug testing is so important, because particularly VADA testing, because VADA testing has a long track record of catching people positive tests. I understand what Amir says. I didn't know knowingly use anything. Umar, tell me the last time you ever heard a professional boxer or a professional athlete of any kind tell you that they used something knowingly. I've yet to hear somebody say that they used it knowingly. They all say, I didn't know it was there. I was tainted supplement. Somebody gave it to me, blah, blah, blah. I mean, Gerald Miller tested positive for like 12 substances or whatever. I'm joking. I mean, it was like 5 different things or whatever. And one of them you could only take by taking an injection. So you can't tell me you didn't know that something was going in you. This is not like, you drank something or whatever. I mean, so I tend to not believe the guys that say they unknowingly did it. In Amir's case, I'm not saying I think he's lying, but I just don't know the answer. I'd like to believe he didn't use it on purpose, but the track record in this sport and all sports is that most times, it's a knowing situation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, let's move on to heavyweight talk. Anthony Joshua made his return a couple of weeks ago against Jermaine Franklin here. What were your thoughts, your honest thoughts on Anthony's performance? And also, second part to this question, I don't know if you've just seen, but he's put on his Instagram that he's going to be back in December. He was scheduled to fight in July and have 3 fights this year, but he said he will be not fighting in the summer and he'll be back in December.
Well, as far as his performance goes against Jermaine Franklin, I think I'm probably in the majority with most folks where, he definitely needed very badly to get the win, and he definitely got the win. It wasn't controversial. He clearly was the winner of that fight on points. But when you look at the overall performance, you have to be a little disappointed. And when I say disappointed, I don't mean disappointed because he didn't get a knockout. A lot of people are like, oh, he didn't get a knockout. That's such a huge disappointment. I don't think about that. To me, a knockout is not a preordained thing, and you have to take into account the abilities and the heart and the desire of the opponent and a lot of different factors that go into it. So the fact that he didn't score a knockout against Jermaine Franklin, who obviously has a very durable chin, in no way is my reason for saying to you that it was a disappointing performance. The reason it was a disappointing performance is because he just looked like he had, like his mind was spinning during the fight. Like his physical attributes are great. He looked in great condition, even if he was at a heavier weight than he'd ever been at 255 pounds. He still has a tremendous ramrod kind of jab. He still had the stamina to go the 12 rounds. Those are all good factors, but he just kind of looked gun shy. Like he didn't want to mix it up at all. Like he knew that if he got hit with a good clean shot, it might cause trouble. He's having like flashbacks or bad thoughts in his mind about what happened in the fight against Andy Ruiz the first time, or even the way he got touched up, particularly in the first fight against Alexander Usyk. Like I just don't. He maybe for good reasons he doesn't trust his chin or his ability to take a shot or deal with adversity. So he's become a very cautious fighter. He is not the destroyer, march forward, blast your head off Anthony Joshua that we saw when he first became a heavyweight champion and was, going through lots of good quality opponents. I think that he changed. I believe that he changed the style because of the life and death scenario that he had with Vladimir Klitschko, which then became, and he won that fight, but then it became more exacerbated when he got knocked out by Andy Ruiz. Remember cruising through that fight, had him on the deck in the third one, I believe, and then suddenly it all changes with one shot and he's down 3 times and stopped. That changes fighters. We can go back to boxing history. You can find fights where guys were the winner and it changed their career for the worse in terms of their style. I always think of the fight between, at the time, the great lightweight champion Hector Camacho, who was dazzling, who was fast, who was one of the biggest stars in the lower weights of that time period in the 1980s. And he had a fight against Edwin Rosario, a fellow Hall of Famer, a fellow Puerto Rican, at Madison Square Garden. And he won the fight. It wasn't like it was, it wasn't controversial. He was the clear winner, but he took so much punishment in that fight and got rocked with shots. He just like, I'm never going to go through that again. And he became a safety first fighter and cautious the rest of his career. And so Joshua, I'm not saying it's exactly the same scenario, but I feel like he knows I better make sure I keep my chin down and my hands up, or, I'm going to have a short career. And it's made him a less fan-friendly fighter. I don't knock him for it. You got to do what you got to do. But clearly things have changed with the way he approaches the fight once the bell rings. Now, whether he can ever revert back to the fighter that we once saw, if Derek James, the new trainer, can kind of break through to him in a mental way, I really don't know. It's unlikely, it seems to me, at this stage of his career. So that's the reason why it was a disappointment. And but I have nothing but good thoughts for Anthony Joshua. I like him. I wish him the best. He's been a great asset to the sport of boxing. I think he's always been a good guy since I've known him. In terms of his decision to not fight in July or the summertime, I can't say I'm surprised. I mean, this is not the first time that Anthony has won a fight and talked about having a busier schedule, and so then it doesn't happen. So, I sort of was like, I hope he comes back in the summer. I think it'd be good for him to have the activity. It's good for boxing. It's good for his career. But on the other hand, it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, when you get to that level and there's lots of things that go into the schedule, the amount of money that's involved, picking an opponent, the opportunities that present themselves, your relationship with your broadcaster, et cetera, it makes it a little bit more complicated. And so in no way that I'm shocked. It's kind of disappointing he would have to wait all the way till the end of all the way to the end of the year. In other words, instead of coming back in July and now going to maybe wait all the way to December, could you come back maybe in like September, October? Like, it seems like an unnecessarily long layoff for a guy that really, unless I'm not aware, didn't come out of the fight with any particular like injuries or that type of thing.
No, I mean, he didn't put in his statement that, it's due to injury, and he looked fine on the night. I'm not sure if he's injured. He might have not put it in, but
I'm not, obviously.
Yeah, as far as I know, he's not. The only thing that springs to mind is obviously in December, end of November, December, Saudi Arabia, it's no secret they want to stage a massive heavyweight fight. So maybe he's just waiting on that opportunity, Dan. Is that maybe what's going on?
I mean, that's always possible, but the reality was if he wasn't going to have say a Tyson Fury fight in the summer, Saudi Arabia was still going to be there also. So if it's a matter I want to not take a gamble of losing and go into that big mega fight, I mean, I can't really argue with that, I guess. But the point was, his talking points, his viewpoint was, I need to stay busy. Eddie Hearn's thing was, I need him to stay busy. I want him to stay busy. Derek James was like, look, it's his life, his career, but I'd like to see him active. We need to work on things. So if that's everything that's being said beforehand, and then you say, yes, I'm going to come back in the summer, and then 2 weeks after you win your fight, you say, forget all that stuff. I'm going to wait until December. I mean, okay. I mean, I can't argue with that. I'm not like mad about it. It is what it is. I mean, I hope that the reason is because I'm going to be fighting Tyson Fury at the end of the year. Because right now, as far as I know, Tyson's got nothing lined up. He was supposed to, obviously fight Usyk in April. It didn't happen. End of April. That did not come to pass. He's not encumbered by a mandatory defense with the WBC. He can do anything he wants. But if he wants to wait for Joshua, I mean, we've wanted to see that fight for so long. So if it means we got to wait an extra 6 months, I think an extra 6 months, we can all live with that. But I don't know that to be the case. Maybe that's the reason, as you said, there's no clarity just yet. But if that ultimately becomes the reason, I can't blame him for waiting until December.
Okay. Well, talking about heavyweights, we saw Jared Anderson do his usual thing last night. Another stoppage victory for Big Baby, really making a mark now on the heavyweight scene. Dan, what do you think it should be next from? Because a lot of the action really in the heavyweight division, the big names, are actually in the UK. I'm not sure if how realistic it is that the big sort of names want to get in with Jared Anderson until they're mandated to, and they've got to. So how long do you think before we see Jared Anderson in a really big fight?
Well, that's hard to say, only because it takes two to tango, as they say. You can't just have a big fight if you only have one guy willing. Jared Anderson clearly is willing to fight a top, or not necessarily a top guy, but certainly a better guy than the ones he's been fighting. Like, I don't think anybody is going to say, maybe Jared would say this, but his team, his promotion, certainly fans, press, whatever. I don't think anybody's going to tell you that he is ready to fight Tyson Fury, for example, or that he is even ready to fight a Deontay Wilder, or he's ready to fight an Alexander Usyk, those types of names, a Joe Joyce. I mean, these are the very best of the heavyweights in the world. I'm sure that his team would jump at an opportunity to fight Anthony Joshua, although Joshua would obviously not do that because there's absolutely zero reason to do so. So in terms of his performance on Saturday night, first of all, he looked absolutely sensational against George Arias. Now, George Arias was an undefeated fighter, but it didn't surprise me. The over-under on that fight, I do a betting show with BetUS, was like 4.5. I got asked, what do you think? We didn't do like official picks. I usually go overs on fights like that. I'm like, you know what? I would take the under on that. It turned out to be 3 rounds. It didn't surprise me. Arias is always like kind of a short, stocky guy. I'd never really fought anybody, and you're fighting a killer in Anderson, who's clearly on the upswing in a big way. He looked phenomenal. The next step for him, Top Rank, is this is going to be the last time we'll see him on this type of undercard. I mean, boxing fans don't realize it right now, but one of the things I enjoy, even if they're not the most ultra competitive fights, even though the guys are taking steps up, you had a fight where you had Shakur Stevenson, who was a phenomenal fighter, is going to be a pound for pound king someday. I already think he's a top probably 5 or 6 pound for pound fighter in boxing. You have him in the main event, but then you have, at least in my opinion, the 2 fighters that I have picked as the prospect of the year for the previous 2 years. You got the 2022 prospect of the year, the lightweight Keyshawn Davis, and the 2021 prospect of the year that I picked, the heavyweight Jared Anderson. And all 3 of them are on the same card together. That's how you're going to look back years from now and go, oh my God, they had Shakur Stevenson, Jared Anderson, and Keyshawn Davis all on the same card. Those days are coming to an end because Jared Anderson's next fight is right now scheduled, as I have reported, for July 1st. They're going to take him home for his first ever professional fight in his hometown of Toledo, Ohio. And so now, if he's in the main event, they want to put him in with a real guy. Not to say that George Arias wasn't a real guy, and his previous opponent in December, Jerry Forrest, who was like a fringe contender, wasn't a real guy, but he blitzed through those guys. He took out Forrest in 2 rounds, and he took out Arias in 3 rounds. So they want to step him up. So I think if you talk to the people at Top Rank, they would love, and I'm not saying this is the fight that's going to happen, so don't make a nasty headline that misconstrues what I'm saying here. And I'll let you guys love to do that. I'm not offended, but please don't do that. They would love to match him up with somebody like Joseph Parker, for example, like to take that kind of level step up, where Joe Parker obviously is a very credible, very quality heavyweight, but he's not at the elite level at the moment. But he's been a former champion. He's fought everybody. He's got a great chin. He's been in the ring. He knows what he's doing. He was a good amateur. In other words, they want somebody on that level, somebody that is not an old man, but somebody that they think is going to perhaps provide competition, but obviously they're going to like their guys' chances to win. So that type of opponent, whether they're willing to do it, the way it works in this business is the more money you throw at an opponent, the more likely that they're going to say yes. So if you go to fighter XYZ and say, we'll give you whatever, 250,000, and then they're like, no, thanks. And suddenly within a little while, it gets to 600,000, things start to change in their mentality. So, they are aware. Top Rank, they're not neophytes. They have been doing this for over 50 years in this business. They understand what it takes to build the guy up. And they know that when it gets to this point, and you're right on that edge of taking that big, giant step up, after which there's no coming back, that it's going to take some money to get these guys in the ring. But Jared Anderson is like, at this stage of his career with only 14 fights, he's like a couple of fights away from being in some major events. And he's going to be a linchpin of the division if he keeps winning. We still don't know how his chin is. At least in this country, he's going to be a highly significant fighter because he looks the part, he talks the part, and he punches the part.
He certainly does. Someone else who looked the part once again, obviously, was Shakur Stevenson last night. Yeah, talk to me about his emphatic domination of a performance, and also he wants Devin Haney. If he beats Lomachenko, he's called out Devin Haney.
He did call out Devin Haney. He would fight Lomachenko. I mean, I have zero doubt in my mind. I have known Shakur Stevenson since he was an amateur. I've covered many of his fights, interviewed him many times. This is a throwback in the sense that I'll fight anybody, anywhere, anytime. Make the right deal, and I'm in the ring. It reminds me of the mentality of the Evander Holyfields and the James Tonys and Bernard Hopkins, and just guys who are not interested in ducking anybody. Make the appropriate business deal. Tell me what time to show up. Tell me which is my locker room. Give me, my necessary 8 weeks to train, and I will be there with, and be in the ring and take care of business. I'll take names and kick ass. And that's what Shakur Stevenson is doing right now. You are watching the evolution of the future pound for pound king. That's the bottom line. He is absolutely a brilliant fighter. I was talking to somebody after the fight, super late last night. And they were asking me, like, can you think of anything that's been like this trajectory of a fighter? And I was like, of guys I've covered from the early days. Like, I mean, when I started to cover like Roy Jones, for example, who to me is the best fighter I ever covered, he was already in his prime. I started when he was already a light heavyweight champion. So he was already an established pound for pound guy. But guys I covered from the beginning, who I watched their evolution up close to see it, there's a few guys like that, like Lomachenko, for example. But there's very few guys where you watch and you see them just blossom. And that is what's happening right now with Shakur. People maybe not realize that they're going to look back, in a few fights and say that was the case. But, putting aside his problems of making 130, which caused him to be stripped of his titles, he still fought Conceição and looked phenomenal against a guy that was an Olympic gold medalist and a really good, skillful boxer. He took apart Oscar Valdez, who had never been beaten, and didn't just win, but did so handily. Knocked him down, won probably 10 or 11 of the rounds in a dominating situation. Jamel Herring, when he was at the top of his game, he absolutely shredded him in a stoppage. He's getting stronger. He has now become a full-fledged lightweight. He looked strong. And Yoshino, who was undefeated, who had defeated Ito and Nakatani, two good quality guys, pretty impressively, just had absolutely nothing to offer other than his heart. I can't put stronger words of brilliance on it, of what he did the other night. And he commanded the ring. And by the way, anybody that says, he's not a ticket seller, he's not a draw, well, he put 10,000 people in that hometown building, which was the biggest crowd he's done when he fought back in the end of last year against Conceição. Put about 8,000 in that arena, maybe 8,500, something like that. So he's becoming a draw, at least in the metro New York area. He's going to have a chance to be a crossover kind of guy because he's got a great smile, he's got a good personality, and he can fight his ass off.
He definitely can. And just to close off, have you had a chance to watch the DAZN card? And also, Bam's broken his jaw, and I know he was scheduled to signed to fight Sonny Edwards next. So I don't think that's going to happen. Bit of a disappointment, but yeah, did you watch that?
Yeah, I did. It was a busy Saturday night because I was kind of going back between different shows, so I was paying most attention live to the Shakur fight. Yeah. I had watched portions of that undercard, but I did watch the Bam fight in its full entirety. I had seen parts of it, but I watched the rest of it when I got up on Sunday. Also was paying attention to what was going on our Showtime card with Sebastian Fundora's big, dramatic upset knockout loss. But in terms of Bam Rodriguez, I think a lot of people expected that he was coming down in weight, so he'd be a little stronger. He didn't have a problem making that weight, going down from 115 pounds where he had won a title to now try to win this flyweight belt. And Christian Gonzalez, who was the opponent, had no resume to speak of. And yet people kind of thought, well, you know what? He'll hang in there probably just because he's a tough guy, but Bam's going to take him out. When he didn't, you're like, okay, well, that's the breaks, because he didn't really look spectacular either in his most recent fight on the Canelo card back in the fall. But now we know the reason why, because you got to give Bam Rodriguez all the tip of the hat for fighting 6 rounds or so with a broken jaw. And clearly he's not making that up. You could tell when he was talking to my pal Chris Mannix doing the interview for DAZN afterwards. You could see the blood in his mouth, and his jaw kind of looked a little messed up, and he wasn't talking smoothly the way he normally would. He was, he's like, I can barely do this interview. I kind of felt bad, like Chris did also. Like, okay, let me let you get out of here so you can go get it checked out. So that's a situation with that. So unfortunately, he has the jaw injury, and as you mentioned, it's going to probably keep him out of the ring. I haven't seen the diagnosis or heard anything specific. I checked in with the promoters to see what was going on. Haven't heard back from them, but you got to figure, at the very least, he's out till the fall, at least, maybe, deeper into the fall. So when's he come back? Maybe if he can, November, December, if he's even able to come back this year. Obviously, that would preclude a summer type of fight with anybody, including Sonny Edwards. So hopefully he'll just heal up, and he's still only 22 years old, or 23 years old. It's not like there's some urgent rush to get him in the ring. He's at the end of his career or anything like that. So if it takes an extra 6 or 8 months to make that kind of matchup for him, not a big deal. But if you're Matchroom Boxing, you also still have not only Sonny Edwards, but you also have the WBC flyweight champion in Julio Cesar Martinez. So it seems to me that if Bam's on the sideline, maybe they could make Sonny Edwards against Martinez. And by the way, they've had back and forth also. So that's a good match.
Yeah.
They've done the thing. You got the boxer and Sonny, you got the brawler and Martinez. You put them together, the winner emerges with 2 titles and is going to be sitting there waiting for Bam Rodriguez when he comes off of his injury. Maybe he gets a tune-up fight, whatever. But the point is, because of Matchroom and DAZN all working with these guys, and the money is going to be the biggest money for the boxers, but it's not such dramatically huge money that these are not fights that are affordable for the promoters and networks to put together, particularly because, Bam has shown that he can sell tickets at home. He's become a bigger name. No reason why these flyweight titles shouldn't be unified through a series of fights that shouldn't take, 10 years to get done, like we've seen in some other big matchups.
Well, listen, Dan, on that note, always good speaking to you, and hopefully we'll have another catch up soon. All the best. Take care.
Appreciate it, Omar. Thank you, sir.
Because I refuse to not be first.
Do we do enough? Well, I never shut up about it.
It must have been about 16, 17. We nicked their guilt rings. Right, the bouncer's guilt rings.
This is no good for me. That's the reality. If you want the honest truth, and I see it every day,